Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So today we're going to be doing our final project for the week. This is a continuation of last week's project where we selected artifacts that were important to our culture. Today we're going to be adding some more information about those artifacts. Maybe it may be a good time to review some of the text from the week as well as the academic vocabulary words, conditions, and identity. It would be excellent if students were able to use these academic vocabulary words in their responses. There is a short do now warm-up activity that provides another example of a possible artifact. Students can then review their work from last week. It may be helpful to pull up the presentation from last week and to review how students selected their artifacts and the paragraphs that they had written in response. This paragraph is going to be expanded on today. So it may be helpful to create a Google Doc or two Google Docs for students to work on, and it would be helpful to provide an example that students could then follow in creating their own. As you see, I included the sentence starters, and today's additional sentence starters are in red, so students can see how they could add to their paragraphs. I think it's helpful to provide as many examples as possible for students so they can really get a better understanding of what's expected. Especially artifacts from different cultures, etc., is helpful. So there's one example that's included for students about a blue plate. I included one additional one for my students, and it may be helpful if there's other student examples or if you yourself want to include one that's important to your culture, and I think it would help give students a better understanding of your background and also kind of engage them in the assignment further. Again, with these types of assignments, students are going to be, of course, on different levels, so it's important to provide the necessary scaffolds for students and to provide supports and or resources that individual students may need. May be helpful for students to write originally in their native language and then translate portions, or it may be helpful to modify or shorten some of the assignments or provide additional sentence starters for those students. Let's take a look at this activity and we'll jump right into the project. Can somebody please read today's essential question? Good. Again, what are the life experiences of immigrants? Good. Today we're going to be making even deeper connections to the life experiences of immigrants. Can somebody please read the first lesson objective for today? Good. To convey ideas and information clearly in writing. Good. Today we're really going to be working on building up our writing skills. Can somebody please read the second lesson objective today? Good. To use academic vocabulary and phrases in writing. Our academic vocabulary words from this week are conditions and identity. Hopefully we can somehow fit those words into our writing today. It may be helpful to review some of the texts from this week as well as discuss possible artifacts that may be important to the Levine family. Let's take a look at today's warm-up question. A blue plate. What do you see? What do you remember? What do you wonder? You might say, in the image, I see a blue plate. You might say, in the image, I see a dish. You might say, I think that it was important to them. You might say, I think that it was old. You might say, one thing I wonder is what is special about it. You might say, one thing I wonder is whose plate it is. So the blue plate, as we reviewed from last week, was an example of a possible artifact. Plates and dishes and silverware are often passed down between generations and have a very significant meaning to many people. They wrote, "My blue plate is important to me because it reminds me of my mother's love. For example, I can think of us eating good meals and laughing together." It comes from the Ukraine, and it represents the support my family gave to each other. My mother gave it to me because I was moving away. It reminds me of all the delicious food and dishes that my mother served me when I was a child. Now we're going to be adding, in the same way this example does, we're going to be adding some information to our artifact explanation. Last week we selected our artifact, something that was important to our culture and identity, something that was passed down to us, something that's significant in our family. You might add using these sentence starters. For example, and it means, when and how. So you're going to be adding some information to your paragraphs from last week. Let's look at my example from last week. This is a picture of my artifact, a Star of David. It belongs to my grandfather. It comes from his childhood in Germany. It is important to me because it reminds me of what he went through during the war. It reminds me of the importance of respecting people who are different from us. Today we're going to be adding to those sentences. As you could see in red, we are going to be adding more details. And it means, for example, when and how. It comes from his childhood in Germany, and it means that he was Jewish. For example, all Jewish people had to wear the patch at all times and were treated differently because of their religion. It reminds me of the importance of respecting people who are different from us and how important it is not to mistreat others because of their background. Then we are going to take our paragraph and add a response to it on the right side. As you can see, students can copy their paragraph. This could either be done on a Google slide or on a Google Doc. They can put their original paragraph on the left and then write a response paragraph on the right. My artifact, the Star of David, helps me connect to my heritage because it belonged to my grandfather and reminds me of what he went through during his childhood. It is an important symbol of my identity and is a reminder of the conditions of his childhood. So again, this is a short response explaining the connection, how the artifact connects. Does it connect to our background? Does it connect to our culture? Does it connect to our religion? Does it connect to our race? And how can we include our academic vocabulary words in our writing today? It may also be helpful for students to respond on a Google Doc. So it may be easier for students to edit as well as to translate and move text between documents. It's also helpful if an example can be provided at the top and students can mimic or respond using the example based on their own artifact. So it's important to encourage students to build up their writing from wherever they're at and to provide necessary scaffolds in order to help them. I think this is an excellent way for students to share more about their culture and for students and teachers to learn from each other. I think this is a really interesting project that students will enjoy. Thank you.